Hi guys, good morning. Welcome back to Baking with Mariah and Scott. Oh no, it's opposite, so this is not good. Okay, so today we are going to be making chocolate eclairs. So these have 3 steps to them. There is the actual eclair, there's the whipped cream, and so we will be taking care of all of those. The first step you're going to do is you're going to turn your oven to 375, and you're just going to do you're going to bake 375. So we're going to do bake 375. Start. So this recipe is different than the rest that we've done because it takes place on the stove. So make sure that you have a little bit of space. The first part is on the stove. The rest you can do off the stove. You just need to bring your stuff to a boil. So you are going to need water, margarine. We use margarine. So we are going to use our vegan Becel, and that will get us our dairy-free, and sugar. So that is the first step. So first you're going to put 1 cup of water into your pot. So Scott, you can go put that in. Then you are going to do half a cup of margarine or butter. It's up to you. So if you want to do butter, go ahead. We're going to use the vegan margarine, so they're dairy-free, so that they're good for all of us. Half a cup, please. I think you put your cup there. You don't want to check. So that's a 2-cup measure. You need to take some of that out. And then once your margarine or butter is in, you're going to add 1 teaspoon of sugar. That is the extent of the sugar in the actual dough. And you're going to want to turn that on to about 4 or 5, so medium heat on your burner. And you're going to want to kind of mix that, but let it boil. So you need it to get to a boil before we can do anything else. So we're going to do that once Scott has started. So I am just going to turn this on. And if you have any questions during this, just let me know in the comments and I will make sure I answer those. Scott's going to get this going for us. Yep, you can put that right in the pot. Perfect. And then the last ingredient, Scott, is 1 teaspoon of sugar to that. Oh dear.
Yeah, let's do that. 1 teaspoon?
It's early in the week. We're still struggling. Yeah, 1 teaspoon right into the pot. Perfect. And then you're going to be in charge of watching that. We want that to come to a boil. It'll take a bit. Just make sure you're mixing with the spoon because you want all the clumps gone. While you are waiting for that to come to a boil, what you're going to need to cook them on is a baking sheet. So you're going to take your baking sheet, and I'm going to use parchment paper, but you can either use parchment paper or tin foil, whichever one is best for you. If you don't want to use anything that will make it non-stick is your best bet. We are going to measure that out. So these are a really easy recipe. The only tricky part about them is the mixing, because it gets pretty tough when you're adding the eggs to it. It can get kind of thick, so you may need another person. Another thing about this recipe in particular is if you're using large eggs, you only need to use 4 of them. If you're using a medium-sized egg or a smaller-sized egg, you'll need 5 eggs. All right. There we go. Okay. So what I will get you to do while you're waiting for that to come to a boil is I'll get you to assemble the rest of your ingredients. So once that comes to a boil, you will need 1 cup of rice flour. You can use any type of flour you want. We are using just the Clubhouse rice flour. We've tried this with a couple different blends. We've tried it with the gluten-free flour. We've tried it with regular flour. We've tried it with almond flour, or the almond flour. This one brings it closest to the actual texture you're looking for. So if you're looking for one that's closest to regular flour, go with this one. We find the gluten-free blend can be a little bit creamier. This one we really like. And you don't need to make any adjustments to the quantity. Just the 1 cup is exactly what you'll need. After that is mixed in, you'll just need to add your eggs. So make sure your eggs are out. They don't have to be room temperature. I typically do mine at room temperature just because then I remember how many I need, but you don't have to have them room temperature. After that is you just get to pick the shape of yours. So with my family, we will do them in longer ones. So they end up being about this big when you make them. So it ends up making about 10. If you make them a bit smaller, you can make more. Obviously, you'll just have to check the cooking time. These cook for 45 minutes. With the almond flour, we have found that 45 minutes is exactly how much time they need in our oven. Check them just because every oven works a little bit differently. But 45 minutes is usually a good start, so go with that. Scott, how's that going over there? Melted, but we need it to get to a boil. So you need it to be a rolling boil before you add anything else. So melted is great, but make sure you see those bubbles. All right. So the other difference about our eclairs too, okay, how many extra large? If you're using extra large eggs, start with about 4. Well, yeah, I think 4 is probably the best bet to go. You don't want it to be too hard. You want it to be a little bit runny, but not too runny. If you put 3 in and you notice that it's really, really soft, don't put a 4th in. I will show you that part when we're making it so you can see the texture we're looking for. You want half a cup of margarine. So Michelle, you're gonna want half a cup. You can use butter or margarine. We just use margarine because we can use the vegan one. If you wanted to use coconut oil, I'm sure you could. You just kind of want to see online if there's a quantity difference. I don't use coconut oil for this kind of thing, but I'm sure you could. How's it coming?
So great.
Excellent.
No bubbles.
It'll come. I promise. It will come. All right. So if you're looking at what ingredients you're going to need for the next steps, for our chocolate portion of this, a lot of people would typically just do like a melted chocolate chip glaze or some chocolate syrup. We actually use chocolate icing. Partially it's because we're chocoholics in our household, so we really, really like icing and we will use any excuse to use it. If you don't want to use the icing, you can use any kind of melted chocolate you want or a chocolate drizzle of a chocolate syrup, but I will walk you through how to make the actual icing. And we use this icing for cupcakes, for brownies, for cake. We use it for just about everything. So even just having this icing in your repertoire is great for future baking. And then the other option that we have is whipping cream is kind of a bit of a different one. If you are good with dairy, regular whipping cream is fine. We often go for the non-dairy option, which is the coconut cream. So Gailey makes a coconut cream whipping cream. If you are not a fan of the can, you can just get the thicker coconut cream and you can make your own. We just do it this way because we won't use that whole thing of whipped cream, whereas this only comes with such a small quantity that this is what we'll use. So those are your options for whipping cream. Cool Whip is another great one. It is such a low dairy content that a lot of people with dairy issues can use that one. I just prefer the texture of whipping cream in this program. How's it going?
No bubbles.
No bubbles. It's coming. We'll get there. So you'll only need to keep your pot on the burner when you're doing the boiling. Once it's done boiling, you can take it off the burner and do the rest at the island just because it'll give you a little bit more area to work with. So we're almost there. Is everyone doing good? All right. It's a bit of a different angle for us. We've never had to use the stove, so there's a lot of maneuvering of this today. Okay, so you want it to do rolling boil for 1 minute. So once you see bubbles, make sure it's boiling, and then you're going to add your flour. So ours is now at a rolling boil. We're going to let that boil for 1 minute, and then Scott's going to bring it over to the counter, and we will do the rest over here. So when it gets to 140, we will move to the counter. All right. You can shut it off and you can bring it on over. Okay, so we're gonna adjust the camera. Okay, so you can set it on here. So Scott has his there. So Scott, you're gonna add 1 cup of the almond flour. I'll hold that. Perfect. And you're gonna mix that in. So mix that together. So it will already start to form. It'll get really, really thick. And that's when you'll add your eggs. Get it all together. So what you'll notice with this is it starts off really pale. Once you add the eggs will be what adds the color for you. So Scott has his. You just want to tilt it a bit so they can see what it looks like. So that's what it looks like right now. And now I'm going to add 1 egg at a time, and Scott is going to have to mix really quickly. This is sometimes a really good one to have a partner to help you with. Keep going, you gotta mix it all in there. So we're on egg number 2. Every little inch to make sure you're getting all the corners. We are on egg number 3. And our last egg number 4. Okay, can you tilt that once you've mixed that all in so you can show them the texture? Make sure it's all mixed. I want no yellow left.
Good.
All right, yeah, so we're going to tilt, and then can you just show them what the texture is about? It's a little bit liquidy, but it's good texture. Okay, so this is the next part. It may get a little bit messy. We need to put it onto our tray. So, Scott, what we're going to do is you're going to take it. Scott, can you add a little bit of flour to that? We're going to add a bit of flour to ours. I think do about 1/4 cup. Ours is a little bit too liquidy, and I don't want it that liquidy. So just take this one. I just took that. You want it to kind of stay together on your sheet. So if it's too liquidy, it'll just spread out too much, and we don't want it to spread too much. So I'm just going to add a little bit. Okay, so it's a little bit thicker now, so that's better. Okay, so you're going to take it, and you're going to drag it in line. So I will start over here. Bless you.
Oh.
So if you want to make them all very, very even, you can do this by pouring your batter into a piping bag. We're not going to do that because we're not too concerned with their shape or size. But we are just going to put them on the board, add a little bit to them where they need it, so that they should be about equal in size and shape. They grow up. They don't grow out too much, but they do grow up. If you use a regular flour, it will probably end up a bit thicker. But because we're using almond flour, it has no gluten in it to make that texture. So ours are still a bit more liquidy than I would like, but they should work just the same. So we are going to pop these in the oven and they cook for 45 minutes. All right, so Scott, Our next step is we are going to make the icing. So can you get our bowl? Perfect. And we need 1 large scoop of the margarine into that bowl to start with.
Which one? Spoon.
Just like a big mixing spoon.
Spoon on spoon?
Perfect.
Oh. That's
All right. So again, with our icing, we are going to use our vegan basal. It is going to be the base of it. So we don't measure this one too much. Scott's just going to do 1 big spoonful of margarine. That's good. That's all you'll need. So it's about, you can do this. Yes. About that much margarine in the bottom of your bowl. And to that, you are going to add icing sugar. Again, we don't measure this one a huge amount just because it depends on what we're making. We like to make different amounts. But this is the smaller bag of icing sugar, and I anticipate using most of it. So I'll start off with about half the bag in there, just for mixing purposes. Then we will add the cocoa. So we use a couple different types of cocoa. Today I'm just using the Fry's cocoa, but what I typically use is the bulk farm cocoa, the dark red. I like how dark and rich that one is. It's a little bit more bittersweet than sweet. So we like that one as our personal one, but we're using this one today as it's what we have. So I'm going to do about, I'll say about 5 tablespoons of cocoa. Again, you can see I am not overly measuring this. It may be a flaw that I have. I'm not very good at measuring. And I'm going to do a teaspoon of vanilla to that. And Scott's going to start mixing.
I'm not getting it everywhere like I just did.
The last piece of this icing is the milk. So we are using an almond milk. You can use a cashew milk. You can use a plain milk. You can use a soy-based milk. Any kind of milk will work. We just use almond as it's the milk that we use at home. And you're just going to mix that. So the milk is just added in splashes. There's no specific quantity. It really will depend on the day and how thick of the icing you would like. So you add it as it gets mixed. So I'm going to add a bit more so that Scott can get that in. You just want to blend all of those ingredients together. You won't need, you won't need as much icing for chocolate eclairs as you would for, say, something like cupcakes or brownies. You just want something to go over the top of it with. So I'm going to add a bit more icing sugar. And just for richness, I'm going to add a little bit more cocoa just because it's my preference. If you're making a big batch of this, you'll probably use about 6 to 8 cups of the icing sugar and between half to 3/4 of a cup of cocoa. But that'll be up to you and up to your richness. If you don't like cocoa, you could always do a chocolate syrup. You could do melted chocolate with a little bit of cream, and then you could dip the tops of them in. We just do the icing because, to be perfectly honest, I like to fill mine with chocolate versus the whipping cream. Okay, we need to add a bit more of this. That's too sticky. Okay, so with that being said, we have just used our entire bag of the icing sugar, and that will be where we max out. But Scott's going to mix that. I'll probably have to add a little bit of milk, but not a lot. All right. So Scott's just finishing mixing that up. You'll want to make sure you get all the bumps out of that. So at my parents' house, we use a sifter, and that gets all the bumps out of the cocoa and whatnot, because cocoa and icing sugar are really good at forming bats, and they're really not delightful to have. Nobody really wants a mouthful of raw cocoa. So you can avoid that by using a sifter or just squishing with the back of your spoon. So Scott's going to do a bit of squishing. He's done a really good job on this icing. This actually may be our best looking icing we've done yet. If you just want to tip it, show them what it looks like. That's what it's going to look like. Perfect. Okay. Awesome. Okay, so that is done. So our icing is done and can be set aside. Now for ours, we'll probably end up just using the regular whipping cream, or not the regular, we'll use the coconut whipping cream. But if you're using just this whipping cream, in my household, we do throw some sugar into it. So if you're using the whole container, which we're not, we would probably do 5 to 8 teaspoons. If we're just using this, so it's I only have half of this left. I only usually add 2 to 3 teaspoons. I don't like it overly sweet because the other stuff has sweetness in it too. But you can just either put this in a NutriBullet or put it in a regular bowl and whip it up. A technique we use at our house is if you're just using a hand whip or a hand whipper, put your bowl and the little whisks into the freezer for about half hour, 45 minutes before you do it. And then when you mix it all together, it stays a lot easier. You won't get the humidity from outside. You already have the coolness from the bowl. So that will make your whipped cream make sure it actually whips. So Scott, do you have the little magic bullet or little blender here? We can just make a little bit. So Scott's just gonna get the little blender out here.
You want the little blender or the?
We'll just use a little blender because I'm not gonna make a huge amount. We're gonna use our little blender. So at my house, I have a NutriBullet, so I would just use that. We're gonna use whatever we can find here to make just a little bit of whipping cream for whoever may want them. We can always use the hand blender, Scott. That's not a big deal.
Oh, I'm fine.
Oh, perfect. Then we're golden. All right, Scott's going to bring it over, and we'll whip that up and add a little bit of sugar to it so you can watch it. If anyone has any questions, just let us know, or if things aren't working out, you can let us know too. Our batter seems a bit more soupy than it normally would. So we'll see how that turns out for us. Normally it doesn't get that soupy, but also the heat from outside can add a lot of problems for when you're baking. So that can cause some dilemmas. Hopefully they still rise, and if not, it's okay. I'll just smother them in chocolate and I'll still be happy. Okay, we'll just do the hand blender. Do you want to pass me that little blue bowl?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay.
So we're going to put our whipping cream in here. We're going to get our hand blender out.
The prongs might be either in there or there.
We'll just go over it. All right, perfect. So this will make a little bit of noise. So you won't be able to hear me, but I'm just going to whip it for a quick second. And then I'll add a little bit of sugar. All right. So it doesn't need to be super, super stiff, but stiff enough to kind of keep its shape when it gets onto the mat. So if it's too thin, you can always add a bit more of the almond flour. But yeah, if you want to do it in the piping bag, you'll need it a little bit stiffer, so you may need to add a little bit more flour. I'm going to add probably only about 2 teaspoons to this because of the quantity I've made. And then I'm going to whip that in. And our whipping cream is done. So we have a little bit more time to have ours cook. So we're not going to stick around the whole 45 minutes this is cooking. So we are going to say bye-bye. It was fun hanging out with you today. If you have any questions, shoot me an email. And next week, we are doing easy oat bars. So those are gluten-free, dairy-free, and really tasty, and a really easy snack to do on the go. So feel free to come hang out with us next week. It will be our last one for the summer. But it was fun to hang out with you. So let us know if you have any questions, and we'll see you next time. Bye, guys.